Hey everyone, thank you
Okay.
so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm coming to you from Bangarang country in Victoria, in Wangaratta, where I live. And so a big hello. I was so excited hearing Connie's presentation just then. And a lot of what I talk about will build on that as well, which is fantastic. Yeah, so all the jobs I've had that I never knew existed, right? This is what I want to tell you about is some of the jobs I've had in my digital career. And because most of them, when I was in high school, I never knew that they existed. And I'm making this point because I think it's probably going to be the same for you. I mean, if you're thinking about a career in any sort of digital technology, there's a good chance that whatever you're going to do in a few years' time, it doesn't exist yet either. And that's fine. It worked for me. Um, and I was listening to Connie too and thinking, gosh, there's just so many really interesting jobs in digital, isn't there? What have you heard today that you've thought about doing? Is it more than one? Because that's what I'm like. I would be thinking, how many of these would I be able to do? Because I'm just always curious and always wanting to learn. I can't do just one thing. And it turns out that there's a word for it, which is great. I'm a slashy. And a slashy, if you haven't heard, it is somebody that has multiple job titles at any one time. And that is definitely me. This gives you a bit of an example of my slashy career. You can see too that they're not all digital. And I don't know how closely you're reading and looking at it, but it kind of also just doesn't follow a logical structure. But maybe we'll get to telling some of those stories as well. Now, I'm not going to tell you about everything that I've done, but I will pick out a few of the things that I can share with you and perhaps a few stories. I do really want you to ask me questions though, because if there's two things that have helped me get all the way through my career, it is curiosity and the courage to ask. Both of those have opened lots of doors for me. So please ask me questions as well. So as you can see, I started out in music. I got into some software development, then into a bit of project management and program building, community building, and now I'm an innovation consultant. So we're going to cover off some of those. But I wanted just to pause for a sec because I'm sure you've just heard so many great jobs today and thinking about what would be your ideal slashy combination right now. If you could have a job or multiple jobs, even just thinking on your top picks from today, I'd love to hear about it. If you can share it in the chat, I can't see it right now, but later on when we're talking, that would be really cool. Going from what Connie was just saying, I've got a new one. I think being a bug bounty hunter sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm putting that on my list to do later. When I was back at school, if I was to have a slashy career, and I was thinking about the answer to the question I just asked you, this would be the subjects that I was were really interested in. Bear in mind that I didn't know things like bug bounty hunter existed. So we're going back a few years now. The things that I were really interested in high school were music, definitely music. I loved being in bands. I loved playing with other people and making music with other people. I loved maths, but I couldn't see a job in it. I just loved all the problem solving. Like I really loved algebra. I did maths methods. I just loved it. And I also loved English and storytelling. I was really into my sewing and my fashion. I was making my clothes, and art, which is just like something I've always done. So all of those, I was really probably thinking my first slashy career would be musician / artist, I think. And I still love doing all of these things. So I've still got a bit more of my slashy career to go. And what I love about it, right, is you can have one main job as a slashy and then have a few things on the side. And this is really helpful if you're wanting to try and test out whether you really like something enough to do it full time, or if you get to a point in your career where you're thinking, I don't know what to do next, you can try a few things out at the same time. I mean, why not? The thing that I love about it, though, is that you get to mix up these combinations of skill sets that are quite unique. You're not just the same. You're not just doing one job like a whole lot of other people. You're a slashy. You're a something plus, plus, plus. And that diverse skill set can make you super valuable. So I want you to think about that, not having the exact same career as me, but having this combo slashy career, and how that unique combination that you keep evolving can help you find some really exciting jobs that you're totally curious about and totally want to do. I want to, like I said, I'm not going to touch on absolutely everything that I did, but I do want to talk to you about how I became a coder, because that was my first full-time job. I did study music at uni. I studied in Canberra at the ANU. I studied jazz saxophone, but I realized about halfway through that I couldn't do just one thing, as I said. And it's a bit of a funny story, but I was in New York, and I was experiencing what it was like to be a real jazz musician. I was over there by myself, living with some more experienced jazz musicians, and I realized pretty quick that this wasn't the sort of life I wanted to have. And I got lost in a museum, and I came across an artist who was doing this amazing thing. She was combining her fashion and her music and her storytelling and her art, and it was all in this digital 3D thing. So you can imagine, for me, with, I'd just been focusing on music and I was telling you about all the things I loved at school. Suddenly it just went bang, this is what I want to do. I didn't know that you could do all of that. So here I was, lost in a museum, came across this, and not knowing that there was a word called slashy, I realized that this is where my slashy career would be born. And I came back to Australia, and I found out that through my uni course, I could do an elective in coding. And so I started to really get into coding in the last part of my music degree. And then not long after, as soon as I graduated, I jumped straight into software development. So went from jazz saxophone into software development. And I got a job that way as a sort of a cadetship. So while I was learning, I got to also work. And that was fantastic. The things that I loved about it was, unlike music, you can imagine, I don't know if you play music, but you've got to perform and you've got to get it right on the night. But if you're a coder, you can test it. And if it doesn't quite work, you've got time to sort of fix it up and debug it before you launch it to the world. So that suited me a lot better. And how did I get good? Well, I got good because I was curious and I had the courage to ask. I Googled lots of things. I read lots of books. I learnt from a lot of mistakes, but I also had great people around me that would just help me. So I was the newbie, I was the beginner, and I had a lot of people that were more than happy to teach me how to fix things. And so I got good from that, but also lots and lots of hours of coding, staying back late or working at night to really solve things. And that's how I learned to be good, learning from others. I used a program called Flash. Now, this isn't a piece of my work. I've pinched this off the internet because Flash doesn't exist anymore. And so I cannot show you any of my work, but this gives you an example of, this would be what I'd turn up, and this is what work looks like to me in my early career. And I loved it because it looked like music. See down the bottom, you've got this thing that looks like a score or a timeline. So that was really normal for me. But then I had my art bit at the visual bit, and then you can't really see it, but there's all the code windows as well. And coding was my maths and my algebra. So I love this because it was all fitting together, right? I might have had just one job title, but it was still like a bit of a slashy in a box. And this gives you an idea. So I want to show you this screen because it might be something that lights you up as well, and you're thinking, oh yeah, I could play with that. Well, maybe you already play with something similar. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the fun things I did early on in my career and why I loved coding so much. I used to make sort of web games, so not your really high-end games, but you know, nothing for like Xbox or PlayStation or anything like that, but just like these games that you would play on websites. So the National Museum of Australia, we made some educational games about the gold rush or about immigration and things like that to teach students. So they're things that you would learn, you might go and do as part of your schoolwork. I would be coding these and making them sort of animate so they would be interactive. Interactive was a big buzzword back then. I also worked for the Army and how to teaching people how to operate helicopters. So everything from how to fold the rotor blades to how to use the central processor unit, how to park it, what the different lights meant. I also, while I was in Canberra, worked on passports. The passport agency, we made an educational interactive thing about how to process them, how to detect fake passports. So you can see it was like every project was wildly different. And this was another great thing that I loved about coding, was because if you're building it, you have to understand it. So I was learning all these different things, you know, helicopters, passports. We did something for the police on domestic violence as well. Like there was just really all these different things. So I loved it, constantly learning. I moved to London from there, and then I was working with some really good design agencies over there. And it was the similar sort of work. It was just more high-end clients that had more money. And so I was making games for Vodafone and Toyota, things that got people interested in their new car and that they'd play on their phones. This was right when the iPhone was coming out. So we're going back to sort of 2004, 2005. One of the weirdest jobs over there that I did was and it was probably the most proper computer game that I made, was this game called Hot Barrels for a really rich client. And he was just this really rich guy that wanted his own computer game called Hot Barrels. And so instead of working for a big company, we were just working for this one sort of really funny guy that would just come in and say, could I get some more lions in my hunting game? And I'm like, sure, we'll add some more lions. Anyway, he was unusual. Worked with all kinds of people, really fun. Probably the coolest, most cutting edge thing I did in London was an online magazine, which at the time, so you've got to think this is, you know, going back more than 15 years now. The thing that was really cool about what we were making was that you could turn the pages of the magazine on your browser and it looked like a real magazine, but it also had video in it. And as you turn the pages, the video would keep playing. And that was just mind-blowing at the time. But that was really cool because it was actually quite a big team of developers that we got to work with. And by then I'd moved back to Australia for most of that, but I remember them flying me back to finish it off and to launch it. So for the couple of weeks before they launched, I was flown back to London, and it was a bit like what Connie was saying. It was like round the clock. All I saw was my hotel and the office, and it was just this round the clock working to get that done. So it was one of those really intense things where you're just drinking cups of tea, eating pizza, and just coding while we all work to get that done. So yeah, variety. If you're into coding, expect variety for sure. I'm going to totally fast forward and skip the next 15 years or so to talk about what I do now with GHD. And I'm going to show you a video to explain it first, and then I'm going to talk about some of the jobs and the things that I do in it. Let's see. Hope this works.
GHD Digital was born with a single vision: to help our clients transform their business, embrace the future, and change communities for good. The way we live and the way we work is changing at a rapid pace. Disruptive forces are impacting industry sectors such as water, environment, energy and resources, buildings, and transport. As students and leaders of digital innovation, we realize organizations can no longer survive operating business as usual. Owners of critical infrastructure and assets must think and act differently in order to drive cultural change and rapidly transform their organizations. Unprecedented change evokes an urgency and responsibility to design a better future together. Simply waiting it out is not an option. Today, the question isn't, do we need to change, but just how fast? GHD Digital is uniquely positioned to answer this question. People first and outcomes obsessed, we combine industry insights with digital mindsets to maximize opportunities for growth and success. Change isn't easy, but it is possible, and the benefits will see you thrive for a lifetime. GHD Digital, transform for good.
Okay, so that gives you a very quick overview of what GHD Digital does. GHD is an Australian company. It has about 10,000 employees around the world, but we are owned predominantly Australian, and I work from their Wodonga office. And you can see there that we're sort of an engineering company that builds things, and the digital part is relatively new. So we've got a 90-year history of building water systems for cities, buildings, bridges, tunnels, mines, roads, ports, all kinds of things they do. So any sorts of infrastructure and engineering. And so now they're really building up this group that I'm part of in how we can use digital to make that even better for people. So a lot of actually what I do is not coding anymore. It is very much more people-based. And as you probably noticed too, that when we talked about what GHD does, there was no mention of hair straighteners. Just want to clarify that, because that's often the first thing people say to me when I say I work for GHD. Look at what we do. I thought I'd give you a really quick rundown of some of the things that we do. Location intelligence, I'm not sure if you know what that is, but that's like building digital maps of where things are. You can layer them in and you can use them in real time to look at traffic or water flows, or you can be bushfires, how fast they're going. Advanced cybersecurity, I think Connie explained that much better than I could. Software development, that's the coding bit. We build apps, we use things, apps really around sort of the citizen experience and you interacting with the cities and the region and the towns that you live in. Immersive reality, this is augmented reality, virtual reality. We use it at GHD to build. Before we build the actual building or the actual bridge or the thing, we can build it in digital first and walk people through it so they can get a sense of, is this going to work, before we actually build the physical thing and spend lots of money making it. Now we can build it digitally first and work it out. And the same with digital engineering down the bottom. We can go, well, how would we build this thing? We can do it digitally and make a copy of it essentially to test the physics and to test the science of it to make sure it will work first. Especially this is important when you're doing things like working in remote places like Antarctica. You can't get down there to test these things out. You've got to, it's best to be able to build it first and test it virtually before you take it down there, right? The digital innovation, human-centered design part, this is the bit that I play in now. For those of you that are attracted to the digital thing because of the diversity and the learning and constant change and making the world a better place, but you're not really into working in the technology itself, this is where we need you. You're thinking about, if you're going to make something, you're thinking about how a human's going to interact with it. How is it going to be better for our planet? Looking at what they really need so that we can solve the right problem first before we build the technology. And I love this space. This is a lot of what I do is around people with big ideas and us really helping them to make it successful and helping. So people at the start of the project going, what if, could we do this? And it's our job to really start to take that little idea and build it out, a way for it to actually make it happen. But not only make it happen, but make it really good for the world, good for the planet, and good for the communities that we're building for. So that's why I love my job so much. I really, every day is different and I love it. The intelligent automation, advanced data analytics, this is because we can connect everything these days. Everything can be connected, sensors and ways to measure. You create these massive data lakes, and then what can you do with that data to make better decisions? And how can you automate some of that and make it safer and make it more efficient? So I've talked a lot about buzzwords here, and I know the video had a lot of buzzwords, but I'm thinking if any of this is just a little bit curious to you, please just Google it. Actually, Gigi or Kelvin will pop in the link in the chat, some links about the sort of things that GHD do if you're really interested in doing this. And also a link to our graduate program as well, so you can see about your career options too. Just one more thing. Give me one sec. I just wanted to talk on why I love my job so much. Always learning, that's a big thing for me. The diversity of humans and projects. We're all slashies. The people that I work with are all slashies. They've got these amazing diverse backgrounds, and that combination is just so powerful. So I can't say to you more emphatically, just like Connie said, follow your passion, build out your slashy career, because that is really valuable. Whatever that combination is will be a winning combination for you. I really love working with GHD because we really are making the world a better place. And I love playing in this space of humans and tech and working out how to use those to make the world a better place. Plus, like Cody was saying in Ericsson, you get to work wherever you like. I've worked, even when I was working back in London in 2005, I moved back here then, and I still worked for the same companies in London, just from Wangaratta. What's great now is that since COVID, everyone else is doing it. It's a lot easier and it's never boring. And if it ever got to be a little bit boring, I would just find another bit for my slash, an extra slash to put to my career. And I'm thinking, like I said, that whole bug bounty hunter thing's looking really attractive as well. So over to you for some questions. Like I said, curiosity and the courage to ask got me a lot of open doors. So please shoot.
Yeah. Here's a really long question. How did you bring music into the IT industry, or is there a way to bring music into the IT industry? Yeah, that's kind of it for that question. Yeah. And is there a way to merge both of them together?
There's probably some really direct ways of working. Like I know even friends of mine from music, they work on music production and they work on that sort of thing. But I still use my music degree every day, and it's not so much about the playing musical instruments. Mind you, it's amazing how many of my team do, but it's about the discipline of practice. It's about what I learned playing in bands and having to listen to other people, and that you are focused on making something that sounds good to the audience. So it's really about working together to make something for the audience. That's something that I use every day. And even my improvisation with a lot of what I learned, and that comes in handy all the time. But so there are a lot of similarities even in the language, music being a language and coding being a language. I see them as being really similar too. Is that learning how to speak, communicate using music, you'll learn how to communicate as a coder.
Yeah. Here's a simple question for you. What is GHD digital?
GHD, like I said, it's not the hair straightener. It's not Good Hair Day. It stands for Guthrie, Huskinson and Davies, who were the three founders 94 years ago that created the company. And like I said, it was an engineering company that just built things for a long time, but the digital part of it is only 3 years old, and we are growing so fast that by the time you guys graduate, we'll need you. So come and work for us, whatever it is, whatever slashy combination you have. And like I said, it's all about combining that human-centered element and all those advancements in technology to improve what we're building and what we make, to make sure that it's good for the planet and good for the communities that we build it for.
Yeah. How are you coping in the IT industry since you are a woman? Has that impacted anything?
That's a great question. Actually, when I started out, it was probably reverse sexism that helped. I found that there weren't any other lady coders, girl coders around. No, actually, there were a couple, but there were very few. And so people remembered me. I'd go to a conference and there might only be 5 women. So I got known because I stood out. And I also found that it was easy to ask people, because they just assumed I didn't know anything because I was a girl, I'm pretty sure. And so it was really easy for me to ask questions, and I found that they probably gave me more help because I was just a girl, but it really helped me because I got really good, and as good or better than anyone else. So I think things have changed since I started, and I know working at GHD, we value diversity above all else, and it's not just about your gender, or it's about your background. It's about the other skills that you can bring, because we know that that is so valuable, and that diversity is so important. So it's more than just a gender question.
Yeah. Here's another question. Does GHD offer any internships or work experience, I think, for both high school and uni students?
Yeah, we have a fabulous summer intern program, and I think Calvin or Gigi will put some links in for that. So we don't, the high school work experience program doesn't run right across Australia, and it doesn't run all the time, but I'm really happy for you to contact me and I'll see if I can find out if there's something happening where you live. But the summer intern program for grads is really good. And we also have a really solid graduate program, and we're really looking to grow our digital teams. So yes, please get in touch about that.
Yeah. How did you move to London and meet with other companies?
That's a great question. So again, I think it's this reverse sexism thing, but I was working in Canberra for a couple of years as a software developer, web developer, and I was thinking, gosh, I'm getting pretty good at this now. How good could I be? What would be the best thing that I could work on? And I've always wanted to go to London, so I kind of had my eyes on that, and I was thinking, how good, what would it be like? And it was really through like one of those conferences. I must have said to someone, I'm going to move to London and try and get work. I had no idea. And someone said to me, oh, you know, Guy, he's over there. You should just reach out to him. And I was thinking, I don't remember this person, but he remembered me because I was a girl, I think. Anyway, so that's how it happened, by, you know, that sort of chance encounter. But the bit that I can tell you that might be helpful for you was I got set up with an agency. It worked over there that if you have skills, I just set myself up as a freelancer, and you set yourself up with a limited company, it's called over there. It's really quite easy to do. It sounds really complicated and sophisticated, but it was really easy. And I just worked for an agency, and they found me work. So like a recruitment agency, they're like, oh, you know, this Vodafone project, they need a Flash developer for that. And so they would just get me that work for a couple of months, and then when that was finishing up, they'd find me something else.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for your questions. Yeah. So thank you, Emma, for sharing your experience. It's great to see how many people are interested in your presentation.